Proof demo. My name is Ian Taylor, and myself and Matt Roden run these demos sort of twice weekly at around 10 a.m. on a Tuesday and 4 p.m. on a Thursday, London time. And really, the purpose of the demo is to give you an overview of what evident proof is, how it works, and what we'll also do is run through a sample workflow of one of our clients and how they process and use the evident proof system to store their data immutably. So, who are Evident Proof and what is the Evident Proof service? So, Evident Proof is an enterprise platform for storing immutable proof of evidence. And what does this mean, and why is this important to businesses? So, the platform and the technology works in a certain way. We take your data or hash of your data structure and we convert it to something called a proof still. And this can be stored in an immutable way on a technology called the blockchain. So now the blockchain has some unique properties as it stores data in a decentralized, distributed way. And it does this across thousands of computers, meaning that the data is stored in a way where it's basically unhackable. So storing data in an immutable way means it can't be changed, it can't be tampered with. Because of the way that the data is stored, you could take that data and use it later down the line to present it in a court of law. And this could be in a patent scenario or an audit or a compliance scenario, somewhere where somebody's challenged your data and you need to give proof of that data, and we can give you proof of your evidence. So we have a number of clients using the system today. One of them is the largest supplier of government taxi licensing solutions to the local UK government. And effectively, their line of business solution deals with the checks and balances around the governance of issuing a taxi license. So why would they need to store data immutably and protect themselves? So essentially, this year, there were a number of articles in the press which stated that in the last year alone, 150,000 taxi licenses were issued to drivers, and some of those had criminal convictions, drink driving bans, you pretty much name it, they had it. So now at this point, there's a burden of proof on the company and more importantly, the local government to prove that they carried out these checks and balances and that the results were not somehow falsified by, say, a driver or somebody who may be gained access to that data. So using the Evident Proof service, they would have been able to prove that these checks and balances had been made and that the data hadn't been tampered with. So before we go into the demo, essentially, let me set the precedent of what we're going to look at. We can't show you obviously the full line of business application that the taxi licensing software has been using, but what we can show you is sort of a setup proof of concept, a created trimmed down version in a standalone demo, which effectively just shows creating a taxi license, how that's put onto the evident proof system and converted into a seal, and then storing it immutably in a distributed fashion on the blockchain network. So what I'm going to now do is go into the licensing application, and what we're going to run through now is how to create a license. So essentially, this would be anybody's line of application. It could be your Salesforce, your application. We're just replicating how the data would be passed through to the evident proof platform. And normally this would all be done through the API. So what I'm going to do is create a new license. Okay, bear with me a second. So very basic information really to put in here. This would obviously be your line of business application. So I'm going to just do a quick test in here. And then I'm going to make the license active. I'm going to confirm that I've done a criminal record check. Now, there could be hundreds of pieces of data that sit behind this record check, and they could all be stored too. I'm then going to add a license number in there, confirm that I checked an identity check performed, and again, all of the documents associated with that could be within this check. I then create that license. And as you can see, the license is now being created. So once the license has been created, a proof seal is then available on the platform. And as you can see here, the proof seal has been created. And let's describe a little bit about the data that we're looking at now. So initially, we've got the dispatch ID and the dispatch header. So what we have here is an API call into the service, and it's a dispatch of the evidence record into the evident proof service. And the actual evidence, dispatch evidence itself is a fixed schema, and it's the way that we expect the data to be presented to us. And it's this fixed schema that ensures that we can correlate between evidence and proof stored on the blockchain. The important bits as well is where the actual form itself or the data was submitted. So this can be an IP address, or it can also be a geolocation as well. And of course, most importantly, the timestamp that's recorded. And this is obviously recorded onto the blockchain. So we've got the where and the when. And now let's run through a little bit about the structure of the evidence. So the PSU X reference, and really this is just a cross-reference to allow you to check. And this key is the key that relates back to the same data in your database or line of business application. And this really could be a single key or a compound key. It could be an ID, it could be anything, it could be an asset or an individual. And this is really whatever you need us to correlate the data back that's stored onto the system itself. So we have a key and a value here as well, which most software developers will be sort of familiar with, and as a way of storing evidence. And in this scenario, as you can see, we're only storing a single key value. In fact, a dispatch could store many pieces of evidence. These could be forms, documents, etc. And then we've actually got the JSON itself. So you can see we've got a JSON representative of the forms of data. Again, this could be a single field or multiple fields or a form, or it could be the whole of the English dictionary language if we actually wanted it to be. So the proof seal finally here. This is a hash of all the data effectively, and this is the proof seal that is used really for a checksum verification of the data. And none of your data is revealed within this seal, but it does prove your data essentially. The final bit of information that we've got on this page is obviously the dispatch receipt, and this is the return to you by the API call, and effectively the receipt is your method of being able to say that this data has been immutably stored on the evident proof blockchain. And you can also navigate or trace back to the evident proof platform as well using the receipt ID code. And then finally, we've got the proof certificate, and when we create one in a second, it's literally a document that pulls together all the information that we've discussed, and you could present this in a court of law and it would confirm that all the data has been stored on the blockchain in a certain way. So let's say in a sort of a year down the line, we've had somebody challenge the integrity of some of the data, and we therefore need to go back and prove that the data was as it was. So what we can now do is generate a new proof certificate. So this could be done through an API call, but I'm going to click in here, and as you can see, the certificate has been created. And what happens is, in this scenario, is we put out a request, and this goes off to the blockchain. This checks the data and the seal, and then finally checks that it matches to our source data. So if I click on the certificate, as you can see, all of the data is sort of fairly familiar there. The only thing that's different now is really the transaction ID. And the transaction ID is really the key to the certificate. And the chain really is to prove that this is the taxi licensing data. So as you can see, it's a relatively simple process. All of this data that you can see here would be sort of custom built around your in-house application. We work with companies to understand, what your governance model is and what data would be perceived by you to be proof, and all of the certificates could be customized and presented in a PDF in a custom way. So essentially, that's the end of the demo. If you've got any questions, if you could put them over on Telegram, either Matt, myself, or one of my colleagues can answer them. And we look forward to seeing you at the next demo, which will be next Tuesday. Thank you.